Welcome back to the ACE-CPT exam prep series. This is lesson 5. We're moving into a new domain now, program design and implementation. And this lesson introduces the framework that everything else in this domain is built on. It's called the ACE Integrated Fitness Training Model, or the ACE IFT Model for short. Think of it as ACE's own playbook for meeting a client where they are, whether that's someone who hasn't exercised in years or someone training for a competitive event, and building a program that takes them somewhere further. By the end of this lesson, you'll understand the two components this model is built on and how they work together without depending on each other. Let's look at what you'll be able to do by the end of this lesson. There are 4 objectives. First, you'll be able to explain the 2 independent components of the ACE IFT model. Second, you'll describe the 3 phases within cardiorespiratory training. Third, you'll describe the 3 phases within muscular training. And fourth, you'll identify the 5 primary movement patterns used in movement training. Keep the word independent in the back of your mind as we go. It's the single most important idea in this whole lesson, and it shows up again and again on the exam. Let's start with the big picture. The 2 independent components. The ACE IFT model isn't one linear path. It's actually 2 separate tracks that a trainer runs at the same time. The first is cardiorespiratory training, which has 3 phases: base, fitness, and performance, built on a 3-zone intensity model, using tools like the talk test, RPE, and the ventilatory thresholds VT1 and VT2. The second is muscular training, which also has 3 phases: functional, movement, and load and speed, progressing from basic stability to clean movement patterns, to adding real external load. And here's the part that trips people up on the exam. These 2 components are assessed separately. A client's phase in cardio training tells you nothing about what phase they're in for muscular training. You could have someone who's an advanced runner but still needs to rebuild basic postural stability in the weight room, or the reverse. Both are completely normal, and the model is built to handle exactly that. Now let's talk about why ACE built this model in the first place, because understanding the why makes the structure much easier to remember. ACE did its own research into why clients stop working with a trainer, and the answer surprised a lot of people. It's not cost. The overwhelming majority of clients who quit cited a negative experience with their trainer as the reason. And new exercisers are especially fragile in this way. They're prone to quitting within their first 3 to 6 months, regardless of what they're paying. So ACE didn't just build a model for writing better programs. They baked rapport building directly into the same framework used for program design, so that a trainer isn't choosing between connecting with a client and progressing them safely. The model asks for both, together, from day 1. Now, let's break down the 3 cardio phases in detail. Base training is where you start with any client who isn't yet exercising consistently. The focus here is simply frequency and duration, building the habit, and intensity is deliberately kept below the talk test threshold, so the client isn't gasping through every session. Fitness training is the next step up. This is where you introduce the submaximal talk test to estimate VT1 and start using zone 2 intervals to build a genuine aerobic base. Performance training is the most advanced phase. Here, you add formal VT2 threshold testing and zone 3 intervals. This phase is really for clients with specific endurance or sport performance goals, not general health clients. Notice the progression: frequency and duration first, then submaximal testing, then true threshold work. That order matters for the exam. Now, the second track, the 3 muscular phases. Functional training comes first, and its job is to rebuild postural stability and mobility through core and balance work. This is the foundation. You're not adding load yet. You're making sure the client's body can hold good position. Movement training comes next. Here, the goal is to teach the 5 primary movement patterns cleanly, with control, before any meaningful external load gets added. And finally, load and speed training. This is where you layer in external resistance, speed work, plyometrics, and power variations. Notice this mirrors the cardio track structure. Stability first, then skill, then intensity or load. That parallel structure is intentional, and it's part of why the model is easy to apply once it clicks.
This slide lays out the 5 primary movement patterns used in movement training. And honestly, the easiest way to remember these is through everyday examples, because that's exactly how ACE frames them. Bend and lift is your everyday squat pattern. Think of squatting down to pick something up off the floor. Single leg covers walking, taking stairs, or lunging down to reach something low, anything where you're loading one leg at a time. Pushing shows up in a push-up or reaching up to lift something onto a high shelf. Pulling is a seated row motion, or something as simple as opening a car door. And rotational covers anything that involves turning through the trunk, throwing a ball, or a golf swing. These 5 patterns aren't abstract gym exercises. They're the movements your clients are already doing in daily life, which is exactly why ACE builds movement training around them. Let's zoom out for a second and see where this model takes us for the rest of the course. Lesson 6 covers the investigation stage, the conversations and intake work that happen before either component even begins. Lessons 7 and 8 cover the actual assessments that determine which phase a client starts in. Lessons 9 through 11 get into programming within both muscular and cardiorespiratory training. And Lesson 12 pulls all of it together into one worked scenario, so you can see the whole model applied to a single client from start to finish. So everything from here through Lesson 12 is really just filling in the details of the framework you just learned today. Let's test what you've learned with a practice question. How many independent training components make up the ACE IFT model? Your options are 1, 2, 3, or 4. Take a moment to think it through. The correct answer is 2. The ACE IFT model has 2 independent components, cardiorespiratory training and muscular training. If you found yourself reaching for 3 or 4, you might be thinking of the phases within each component. Remember, phases live inside a component, but there are only 2 components overall. Here's our second practice question. What best describes the relationship between a client's cardio and muscular training phases? Your options are, they must always match, they are assessed and progressed independently, muscular phase always determines cardio phase, or only one is assessed at a time. Take a moment to think it through. The correct answer is that they are assessed and progressed independently. The 2 components don't need to line up at all. A client's phase in one has no bearing on the other. This is the same core idea from earlier in the lesson, and it's exactly the kind of concept ACE likes to test from a few different angles. Let's recap everything from this lesson. The ACE IFT model has 2 independent components, cardiorespiratory training and muscular training. The cardio phases are base, fitness, and performance, guided by a 3-zone intensity model. The muscular phases are functional, movement, and load and speed. And movement training centers on 5 patterns: bend and lift, single leg, pushing, pulling, and rotational. If you can explain those 4 points in your own words, you've got the core of this lesson locked in. That's a wrap on Lesson 5. In Lesson 6, we're covering building rapport and the initial investigation stage. We'll get into health history intake, readiness for change screening, and how to set goals collaboratively with a client before any assessment even begins. See you in the next lesson.